In a small urban park in Taiwan, a somber memorial sits on the site of Kinkaseki, a brutal prisoner of war camp near Taipei and one of more than a dozen run by Japan on the island it ruled from 1895 until its defeat in 1945. More than 4,000 names are etched into a granite wall, most of them British and American servicemen held by the Japanese during World War II.
They wouldn't, and they didn't talk about it really till 1995 when reporters were going around. It was 50th anniversary of the end of the war. That was the time that I started to write this letter to say to people, if you were a POW, let me know. And so that's what it was more acceptable to talk about it. And that's when it really started to become known that there were even POWs in Taiwan.
After learning of Kinkaseki in 1996, Hurst spearheaded efforts to locate other camps in Taiwan, build memorials for the veterans, and raise public awareness about their bravery and suffering. Starting in 1942, more than 4,300 Allied servicemen captured on battlefields across Southeast Asia were sent to Taiwan in Japanese hell ships. By the time the war ended, 430 men had died from malnutrition, disease, overwork, and torture. Canadian filmmaker Anne Wheeler's physician father was among the more than 1,100 prisoners of war held in Kinkaseki.
My father came to Taiwan, which of course was Formosa then, and in one of the hell ships, and they were held at the docks and kind of humiliated in front of the locals, and then they were marched to Kinkaseki, which was a terrible march uphill. They hadn't been given hardly anything to eat and didn't have water.
Trained in tropical medicine, the doctor had to be inventive with the rudimentary resources at hand to treat his fellow POWs, who affectionately called him the man sent from God. Inflamed appendices and tonsils, for example, had to be removed without anesthesia using a razor blade because that was all he had, Wheeler said. More than 60,000 Allied prisoners of war worked as slave laborers on the line, with about 13,000 dying during construction, along with up to 100,000 civilians, mostly forced labor from the region.
The thing with Kinkaseki is it was down the mine, several hundred feet underground, and it was so hot, and the men, they either worked naked or with a little Japanese fundoshi loincloth on, and they would work maybe 4 or 5 minutes, mining, and then it was so hot and so humid they'd have to back out and immerse themselves in the ditch that the water ran through. If they didn't do the 10 carts, they were lined up on with their hands on the air pipe that ran through, and they were beaten on their backs from their back to their legs with the hardwood handle of a mining hammer.
Taiwan was a key staging ground for Japan's operations during the war. Many Taiwanese fought for Japan, while people on the island endured deadly US aerial bombings and food shortages. 80 years after Japan's surrender, the former prisoners of war held in Taiwan are all dead, and little physical evidence remains of the camps. The harsh conditions of Taiwan's camps were long overshadowed by Japan's notorious death railway between Myanmar and Thailand, Hurst said.
Now Kinkaseki has become known as one of the worst POW camps in all of Asia, and that's an established fact. And the prisoners that were in Taiwan and had that said to them, of course, that hurt very deeply.
At 77, Hurst is still trying to keep their stories alive through the Taiwan POW Camps Memorial Society and private tours. A gate post and section of wall are all that remain of Kinkaseki, set in a residential neighborhood of Jinguashi town, surrounded by lush, rolling hills. Hurst says he still receives several emails a week from families of prisoners of war, wanting to know what happened to their loved ones in Taiwan. with no one alive to tell the tale of the suffering that the prisoners of war faced in Taiwan. All that is left are the letters that remind the world of the brutal war that was fought and the suffering it brought to mankind.